Last time on Deconverted Man!
My video analysis of why atheism is nonsense, part 7. They think science refutes philosophy and the laws of logic. Automatically agree with that atheist. Of course you would, because, you know, that's how that works, right? It's kind of like saying that all theists deny biological evolution. That's not true. Many theists have no problem with it. Religion philosophy, however, seems to not understand it and have some problems with it, or at least he/she is an advocate for intelligent design, which is not scientific.
Ba, 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 dun, dun, bum, 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 bum.
Amazing, isn't it? It's glorious to behold. It's so beautiful. I should have sent a poet.
And now, the conclusion!
Ah, yes, it seems like forever ago that I did a 7-part series on why atheism is not nonsense, only to find that there's a part 8, and I somehow missed it. Although I think the playlist has 8 videos, and I'm thinking that one of them's an intro. I don't know anymore. It made sense when I did it way back when, and I don't remember what I did other than what was just shown, and you can see from the special effects that that's like in the past, so you should go watch it if you don't know what I'm talking about. So, religion philosophy is back on my radar. Yeah, because I want to torture myself with logical fallacies. So many logical fallacies. I'd rather talk to G-Man again. No, no, I don't want to do that again, ever. Anyway, so, he's now no longer religion philosophy. He's Christianity, reason, and science. Start the logical fallacy counter.
Okay, Dan, can the laws of logic, like the law of non-contradiction, for example, be falsified?
That's a non-question. It's only statements that can be falsified. Logic itself is not one of those statements. It's only a statement that is veridical that can be true or false. And so you're asking a non-question. The laws of logic are not statements.
Okay, so Dan Barker is a prominent atheist and was a preacher for quite some time before he deconverted, and now is head honcho in one of the many atheist communities out there and promotes atheism through books and debates and things like this. He's not an expert on logic, as far as I know. He doesn't have a degree in philosophy, but nonetheless, he could still talk about it. But, okay, we're appealing to novelty by appealing to Dan Barker, I guess, because Dan Barker cannot represent every single atheist. No person can do that. Not even a group that says atheism or Atheists United, or Atheists at Large, or whatever you want to call your organization, that can't represent atheism. Just as much as a church can't represent all of Christianity, even the Catholic Church that says, well, we're the best church, we represent all of Catholicism. Although that might be a little bit different, but even a Catholic Church that you would find really doesn't necessarily reflect every single Catholic view, even though they're more united than Christians. Still, you're going to find differences. So, okay, picking Dan Barker, I guess I would say, at best, is picking a well-known minister from the religious group, okay, and saying, okay, we're going to interview this well-known religious person, and that's going to mean something to the Christians out there. And it's just an appeal to novelty. Who cares what X, Y, or Z person says, no matter how well-known or famous they are, or how well-spoken they are? What's your argument? Because if you don't have an argument, then you're just cherry-picking by putting this out of context and appealing to novelty what somebody said. But wait, it gets worse because Dan already answered the question. That's nonsense. The question that you just asked doesn't make sense. It's a relevant question. It's a malformed question. It doesn't make sense. So the guy restates it as if it's a statement, and it still doesn't make sense. And Dan tries his utter best to answer it. Here's that.
Here's a statement. A can never be non-A. That's a statement. Can you falsify that statement?
Well, if A was ever A...
So you could falsify the law of non-contradiction?
I kid you not, that's it. The entire video titled, Why Atheism Is Nonsense Part 8, is a cherry-picked clip of Dan Barker being interviewed by some Nimrod who is not identified, and the Nimrod interviewing him asks him a loaded, malformed question, and Dan says it's a loaded, malformed question. Then the guy rephrases it, and he does his best to answer. That's the clip. Cherry picking, appeal to novelty, and that's it. That's your argument. Whoa. So, let's analyze this. Let's just pretend that this matters when it doesn't. Okay, so it's funny that it's the law of non-contradiction too, because that one's in dispute. This is something I've mentioned this a couple of times. The thing is, rules of logic, even though we call them laws sometimes, are flexible. We can change them because we made them. We can say, you know what, that one's not that good. Let's get rid of that one. Let's replace it with this one instead. And the books get updated. You need the current copy of, the informal logic book, the book of fallacies, stuff like this. You need to keep current. You need to, be proactive because it changes. It doesn't change often, but it does change. And we know that it changes. We can look at the history of logic and see that it has changed. And we've changed some fallacies around. We've updated our understanding, made some of them obsolete, refined other ones. So what's the problem with falsifying one rule of logic? One, not all the laws of logic, not all the rules of logic, but just one. There is no problem. Because at best, all you've done is demonstrate why that law should come into question. Why it would be something that we might say, you know what, maybe we need to get rid of that. Maybe we need to change the wording of it a bit. And Dan is right. A can be not A if not A is A. Now, if you're saying, let me put the letters in perspective. A pebble is not a boulder until the boulder becomes a pebble, which you can grind down to boulder, and at some point, you're not going to call it a boulder. Eventually, you're going to call it a stone, and then eventually, you're going to call it a pebble, but this is vague. Unless you have like a clear-cut definition of a pebble has to be 2 inches high and 2 inches wide, which is arbitrary, unless you have that, there's no way to say when it becomes a pebble, or when it's a stone, or when it's a boulder. Likewise, there isn't a way to say what a beach is. Oh, sure it is. It's a rocky shore or a coastline next to water. Well, wait a minute. Does it have to be a coastline? Because you can find beaches near lakes. So, and does it have to have sand? No, of course it doesn't have to have sand. It could have rocks. But how much water do you need before you have a beach? There's no answer to that. Technically, a drop of water in any surrounding dirt of any kind, or rocks, or sand, or whatever, that's technically a beach. Because of the vagueness of language. And maybe you could say, well, but I found a definition of speech, and we're going to use that. Right, but that's arbitrary. We could change that. And you say, well, but deconverted man, that's language. How can we be sure of anything if we're going to be so vague? Well, sometimes we can't really be sure, but we can go, well, this is the best we can do. Okay? You know, that's a boulder. Well, it's pretty big. Okay, I guess it's a boulder. That's a rock. Well, it's pretty big, but yeah, maybe it's a rock. That's a pebble. Well, it's pretty big for a pebble, but I can see where you're coming from. Maybe to you it's not that big. So language has the natural language problem. Logic, when it's not in the confines of the system, as the interviewer took it out and said, I'm going to make it a statement, now can you refute it? Now can you demonstrate it to be false? Sure, possibly, maybe. He didn't say it is, but he was like, well, if it happens to not be that way, then yeah. But that does nothing because it doesn't change the rules of logic. The rules say, yeah, that's nice. That might be true, but we don't care because we're still the rules. It's not like you're saying gravity stopped existing, which is sort of what a lot of these laws of logic videos try to promote, this idea that logic is a force of the universe rather than a concept that we've come up with in our brains. And the reason why they do that is usually to promote God of some sort. These series of Atheism Is Nonsense videos have relied solely on logical fallacy, solely on cherry picking, solely on appeals to novelty. Oh look, Lawrence Cross said this, Hitchens said that, Dawkins said that. Out of context, by the way. As if what they said matters in regards to atheism. The only way that you could possibly hope to demonstrate that atheism is nonsense is to show that lacking a belief in God is nonsensical. And the only way to do that is with some sort of logically coherent argument, which these videos don't have. But you know, there's one more video that I need to analyze from Religion Philosophy. I don't need to analyze it. I have the need for speed, but not to you know what? I am an analyzing machine. Unless I become emotional due to G-Man. I'm not supposed to talk about that anymore. Stop talking about G-Man. Okay, logical amount of fallacies in video of is 3 or 5, depending on how you want to look at the malformed / loaded / meaningless question that the interviewer asked. So it's 3 to 5. You decide. Because my analysis was like, well, it's kind of like a combination fallacy. And sometimes I just don't know what the bleep to do with that. So you figure it out, okay? Maybe you can get the lobsters to help. Anyways, we don't have a logically coherent argument. Unless and until we have a logically coherent argument, we have to continue to be skeptical of the conclusions.